But anyways, let's move into the next segment. And we're going to welcome in a special guest. The first time on the Fast Break podcast, we're going to welcome in patron Pat Hill. Pat, how you doing?
I'm good. This is awesome. First time on the Fast Break. I know I've been on the PTP. I've been on the Onside Kick, but this is my first time on the Fast Break, so this is dope.
I know you've been on the PTP talking Kansas Jayhawks, but when were you on the Onside Kick? What'd you talk about?
I think we talked about replacements for John Fox. I think that was
It was right before Nagy when we talked DeFilippo.
Yeah, that was before the Nagy thing.
Yeah, we're pumped about Matt Nagy here, but we're talking Chicago Bulls, shocker, here on the podcast. Pat wants to talk about Trae Young and his fit with the Chicago Bulls because we've mocked this out a little bit. Bulls right now currently slotted at the 6th spot in the lottery. That's total Trae Young range. We've had him falling lower than that, so we're talking about the fit of Trae Young and the Bulls. And, Pat, just assuming that you're a Kansas Jayhawk fan, we got to assume you're watching a ton of Big 12 basketball and you've seen Trae Young play. What do you like in his game?
I do like Trae Young a lot. I do like that. What I really like the most, and not just in his game, but like how he fits with the Bulls, because the Bulls play such a really fast, or they want to play a fast pace and space system, and Trae Young does a lot of that. He's not super good, but he's relatively quick. He can pass well, and he's got amazing outside range, with the Bulls lack right now at the guard position. So I do like him a lot in this game, and I do think that while there might be some personnel issues with the Bulls right now, I do think that he could make a reasonable fit on the Bulls team right now.
Yeah, and clearly right now, he's going to be a point guard when he comes in, and the biggest probably personnel issue is what you do with Chris Dunn if you do draft a guy like Trae Young. Dave, looking at this situation, if Trae Young's still on the board, you're the Chicago Bulls, you're picking at 6 or 7. Is he on the board for you? Are you looking at him? Where is he ranking in your position list, player list? Are you trying to attack him because you still do have Chris Dunn on the board? Or you still have Chris Dunn on your team?
I think he's definitely an option because by no means are we 100% sold on Chris Dunn. Yes, he made some massive improvements this year. What we saw in him going Minnesota to the Bulls is night and day. And while he does look like an excellent defender at the NBA level, and a decent passer, he's definitely not a scorer by any means. He can get in the bucket, but not consistently to the level we'd like. So if you do want to improve that offense, improve some of the passing out there, I think it would be kind of fun to do a guard rotation because honestly, with Hoyball, we could go very small with this lineup and we could run out, Chris Dunn, Trae Young, and Zach LaVine 1, 2, 3. And that kind of gets, I know we're all looking for that. We need a small forward, but why not just run small with guards? Other teams get away with it all the time. It's something that would improve our outside shooting and still give us a decent chance to compete in every game.
For me, and I don't know if you guys are thinking about this, it all depends, because on the mock draft I said, give me Trae Young, give me Michael Porter Jr., I'm a happy Bulls fan. It all matters where Michael Porter Jr. is. If Michael Porter Jr. went in the top 5, it's easy for me. Take the BPA for me. It's Trae Young. I don't care that I got Chris Dunn on this team. I'll make it work because of what Patrick said. The thing that I've loved the most about Trae Young is you get that spacing working, he'll find those shooters. He'll find the shooters that Fred wants in this system, and they can put up open threes for days. It would just be if Michael Porter Jr. was there and Trae Young, then me personally, I would have a decision. And I might lean towards Michael Porter Jr. over Trae Young.
That's definitely going to be an interesting thing. I know if we're talking about Buzz from the Outcast, he's totally picking Michael Porter Jr. in that situation. But Dave kind of brought this up in the pre-show that Trae Young is such a polarizing figure. And Pat, watching a lot of Trae Young and thinking he's a good fit on the Bulls, what do you think you should be telling Bulls fans about Trae Young to calm them down if they do have any worries about his fit or just the player in general?
I would honestly say just look at the player that he is and look how he could fit for the Bulls. I think he's still polarizing because, for the first, half of the season, he was the biggest star in college basketball. He was so amazing. He was throwing down 30 points a game. And when teams started to adjust to him, especially in Big 12 play, where they would throw their 2 best defenders on him because that's all they had on Oklahoma was Trae Young. And then he struggled, and people kind of pinned that on him for Oklahoma struggling. So I guess that's why he's so polarizing, because he set the bar so high and then he kind of came crashing down and he didn't help his team, so it was kind of blamed on him. But I would tell Bulls fans, look, he's got the range which is needed for Fred Hoiberg's system. He can pass super well and run that fast-paced offense for Fred Hoiberg. And I know that his defense is crap. I know that, but I think there are ways that you can hide him on defense that could be made up for with his offense. I just tell Bulls fans, just look at the player that he is and look at his fit in the system. He might not be the name like Michael Porter Jr. or the exact small wing fit that you think they might need, but I wouldn't count him out just because he's Trae Young.
And that's one thing that you brought up is the double team aspect. He was double teamed 43% of his time in college. That's more than Steph Curry ever was. Steph Curry as a junior. This is Trae Young as a freshman. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Pat, is the fact that he was that whole team. And in Big 12 play, you don't see that a ton. You don't see guys taking over in the Power 5. You don't see guys taking over like that, having the usage percentage that he had. I personally, again, think Colin Sexton's a better pro than him, but it's not trying to take away from Trae Young and the potential that he has. And I think Trae Young on the right team and in the right fit could be a really nice player, and especially could end up developing into a star in the NBA. That's one thing, is the fit that Pat keeps bringing up, that he's a nice fit. Do you think that if the Bulls draft Trae Young, do you think that, because Fred Hoiberg hasn't been making a huge mark in Chicago, had nice spurts with this young team, do you think that if the Bulls draft Trae Young, that it might be a way to either save Fred Hoiberg or possibly speed up his time in Chicago? Because you've heard consistently that Trae Young, from people, Trae Young might be the guy that gets someone fired, whether it's a coach or a GM.
I don't. Well, when it comes to Fred Hoiberg and his job security, I don't even think he's on the hot seat. Like,
you think he's off the hot seat already?
Well, no, I don't even
he's
think.
Not on the hot seat.
I don't even think he's on the hot seat. You listen to Paxton in his end of the year conference. Right away, he said, I'm dispelling the rumors. Fred's going to be back next year. I don't even think that Garpax is even thinking about that. And if we draft Trae Young, he's not going to be a guy to get Fred Hoiberg fired. I think that most Bulls fans are just sitting here and we're worrying because we're used to being the team that's on top most of the 90s, all the 90s. We were on top. We're used to being that team.
I was going to say.
I know, but we were.
I wasn't even alive.
And then even like in the Derrick Rose era, we were still a team that was in the playoffs, competitive in the playoffs. We were a team that was going up against that Heat team for can we beat them, and that's what we're used to. So now that we're top 10 in the lottery, we don't like this, and that's why I think that you hear all those, well, if Fred's not fixing it now, he's got to go. But I don't think he's on a hot seat, and I don't think Trae Young would be a player to get him fired.
So do you think that it would extend his possible time? Because you have a guy in Trae Young who fits the system. If he shows enough flashes, that could possibly extend Fred's time.
I would lean more towards that because of, yes, he fits the system. We can then run faster, space the floor better, and do everything of what this NBA, this three-ball NBA is.
So the one thing that brings up, though, is, again, going back to Chris Dunn, who do you think the players that are safe on this Bulls team are? Because if they go and draft Trae Young, you're going to have Trae Young and probably Laurie, who's going to be the two that are going to be for sure safe, because Laurie in his first year looked fantastic. No one's pushing him out of that 4 spot, looking like one of the best shooters at over 7 feet tall. And then Trae Young, obviously the brand new draft pick. And those two, I think, could work really well together. But does that put a different timeline on Chris Dunn or Zach LaVine? Do you possibly see them moving out? Because Zach LaVine didn't have a stellar first year in Chicago. And then you look at Chris Dunn, he had a nice December, and then he broke his face, and then wasn't really the same player.
The thing that I look at, and Pat, I wonder if you're thinking the same thing. For me, my untouchables are, if we draft Trae Young, Chris Young, Zach LaVine, and then Markkanen. The thing that I've liked, though, is LaVine. I've heard people, I know Buzz is one of them, that, what are we going to do with the RFA? Is another team going to offer him something? Zach is going to be back next year. Bulls are going to sign him to a good deal. And the thing I like about Zach, he's come out and said, I am going to help recruit for this city. I am going to bring people in. For me, I love that, because for the longest time I've dealt with Derrick Rose where it's like, Carmelo's in town. I'm not going to go to the dinner. I'm only going to say hi once. That is what I love with Zach LaVine, that, he's going to be a guy that re-signs, and he's going to help us in the future try to bring in free agents to help us to get us back to where we want to be.
Does he help you on the court, though?
Yeah.
And does he help you in that system?
I think he does, and I think a guy like Trae Young is going to, if we draft him, help him and not be like, hey, you got to do everything yourself. No. I'm going to be the guy with the ball when I'm on the floor. I'll get it to you. We'll
go to Dave, and then we'll bring Pat in with his untouchables.
Yeah, I think that LaVine's an interesting case because this year there's not a ton of teams throwing around huge money the way the salary cap's set right now. So I don't know if Levine's really he's not gonna command a max or anywhere near that, but we'll see where his ego is at and where the Bulls get to as far as the price point. I think Markkanen is really the only 100% safe guy on this team.
Not even Chris Dunn?
No, I don't think that you should feel too attached. It was one season. Yes, he improved. Yes, he looked better. But by no means is he like a staple of this is our core. Like, yes, it would be nice if he, Levine, and Markkanen was our big three effectively moving forward. But by no means are those realistic expectations in my mind because he's a good piece. And while he looked good out there, I think he's exactly who you would want on the team with Trae Young because he's someone who can go guard the best guard on the other team. He's someone who can cover up for Trae Young's deficiencies. So if I'm looking at that, I'm going, I definitely want to pair Trae Young with Chris Dunn moving forward. I think Zach LaVine is a guy who, if he comes back and plays better next year, awesome. If not, I'm not sweating it that much because you got value out of this deal regardless. So I would like to say they should keep Chris Dunn. They should try to keep Zach LaVine. And Markkanen's the guy who's definitely the centerpiece. But Trae Young plus Chris Dunn could be really something good.
So, Pat, you've been talking a ton about the fit. Do you think those four players in Levine, Dunn, Young, and Markkanen could all fit in this Hoiberg system?
I think they can, and I would consider those. I would consider Laurie, Levine, and Dunn as untouchables because I think this past season there's just so many factors. You know, Levine came off of injuries. Chris Dunn dealt with injuries because let's be honest, it's not a Chicago Bulls season unless there's a lot of injuries impacting everybody. But if I had to pick there's two other guys that I would not be. I would tolerate if they left, but I wouldn't be happy. You know, I wouldn't like to. Even if Portis left, I would not be. I would be kind of like, I don't think that was a good move, but I'd get over it. And same with David Nwaba. I actually really liked his play this year. If only they decided that a guy they would like to get rid of would be Cameron Payne. That would be fantastic. But I think those three guys, I don't know why they just insist on having him as like, we believe in Cameron Payne. We believe in Cameron Payne. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about right now. But I would consider Laurie, Levine, and Dunn as safe for right now. But I would definitely, because there was just not enough sample size this past season, but they are going to be looked at more next season. Like, all right, like you don't really have an excuse. You guys kind of have to prove it. And if they don't prove, and if one of them doesn't prove it, then you can't really consider him untouchable because they can leave whenever.
I think the one thing, it would look bad if they did give up on those guys early. Because, again, like Pat mentioned, the ACL injury for Levine still wasn't 100%. Didn't look great at points, but also didn't look terrible, in every single game. And then Chris Dunn had a really nice spurt in that December, January months where he would have an okay game, and then he'd come back with like a 32-point performance until he fell on his face and broke it. So, I mean, that was something where, again, I think if you're giving up on these guys a year early, it might be different. But, again, if you're drafting a guy like Trae Young, it might push a guy like Levine or Dunn out because you're going to need to, pair Trae Young with another great guard to at least hide his deficiencies on defense. But the one thing, too, is, again, this won't be, if you draft Trae Young or really any player, I don't think it's going to accelerate the timeline where, hey, we need to win next year.
No, it's not.
I think that's one thing that's going to at least give you time where you can have another year with Levine, Dunn, Markkanen, Young, and see what fits, what pairs fit well. If all five or all four fit well, then hey, great. If three of them fit well together, then maybe you move on from somebody. But I think the two that are for sure untouchable, even after that year, would be Trae Young and Markkanen if they go in the Trae Young direction.
And let's face it this way: like Zach LaVine, I know he played a little bit this season. Next year is true first full year, hopefully, knock on wood. Let's hope he doesn't have any more injuries with the Bulls. But one of the things that just to touch my only thought with if we gave up on Chris Dunn or Zach LaVine now, I wouldn't do that at all. The only reason why is it's telling me as a fan, all right, we lost the Jimmy Butler trade, and all we wanted out of it was Lauri Markkanen because we flipped picks that year, and then we got, like, the whole thing was to get Levine, get Dunn, to get Younger and get rid of Jimmy. And if we get rid of Levine and Dunn, we're basically saying, I would be like, well, then why don't we just keep Jimmy?
Yeah, no.
Why don't we just keep a superstar?
Well, he's not a superstar for one,
star.
But, that's fair. No, I mean, I don't think you should give up on any of these players. I'm just saying that I don't think you should set your expectations as we have our core locked in already. I think I think like Sean said, it's still early. I think we want to give them time to get playing together. You mentioned it'll be Zach LaVine's first full offseason with this team healthy and ready to go.
First regular season potentially because he was on the bench.
No, that's what I'm saying. He'll be his first offseason to work with Hoiberg and kind of learn the system a little better. He was just wildly inconsistent this year. He only played 24 games, I think, and it was just up and down kind of performances. So hopefully this year he'll be able to find his groove. I like you mentioned Nwaba. I think he was a great role player. Defensively, he brings a toughness that we didn't have. I think the one guy who is kind of interesting is, and I think Ricky had brought this up, I'm not sure if it was last week or before, like off the show, but like Denzel Valentine, what do you do with someone like that in this Bulls team? If you go with Trae Young, you have a guy who's a tweener 2-3 maybe. You know, does he have a future? Well,
I think the one thing with Valentine is, again, you still have him on that rookie deal. So it's not like he's on an accelerated timeline either, and you could still bring him off the bench because, again, it's not you have a year to play with fits. And maybe he does fit with a guy like Trae Young and Markkanen, so he does have a future on this Bulls team. I think, you know, the guys that are young and at least have, you know, still on their rookie deal, they're going to stay around on this team. But like, you know, Jerian Grant, Holiday, Rolo as well. I think those guys might be the guys that for sure move.
See, that's the thing. I'm thinking of like flipping these pieces for more picks or more stuff down the line because I look at someone like Bobby Portis who had a great year as a 6-man, and you know his value right now coming into the draft might be a little higher than normal. So you might look at that and be like, well, what can we do? Is there any good moves out there? I don't know. I'm all about like that turnover and that process of being like a tanking team. So I'm like, give me more picks for my guys who, you know, we know what Bobby Portis is. Does he work with this team? Sort of. He's a pretty good small ball 5. He can give you, you know, offense off the bench, but at the same time, are you overloaded the position? You got other options.
Well, with Bobby Portis, I think this kind of goes back to the Trae Young fit is if you look at, you know, small ball 5, it would help with the pace and it would help with the space on that team. So you're going to help Trae Young create more space. You're going to help Lauri Markkanen stretch from the outside. Bobby Portis is going to be able to run up and down the court. Really in shape kid, super athletic. So I think he would fit with Young and Markkanen. It's just really would he fit with Dunn and LaVine as well. And again, we just haven't been able to see all those players on the court, obviously because Trae Young's not a Bull yet. But going back to Trae Young, I think we should talk a little bit about the expectations that he should have for his rookie year, because some people might expect him to be, all right, 20-point scorer immediately and you know, be dishing out 7 assists a game.
20 and 10 rolling out of bed.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's one thing is what should the expectations be for Trae Young in his first year? And Pat, do you think it should be this guy's going to be the number 1 scorer and the facilitator, kind of like, you know, maybe a Russell Westbrook a little bit, where he's going to be the main scorer and then also the ball handler to be distributing, or maybe, you know, again, maybe it's sacrilege to say, but Steph Curry. Or do you think it's just going to be treat him as a rookie, see what he does, and we'll work from there?
I mean, I think you have to treat him as a rookie. To me, Lauri Markkanen is still the number 1 option on that team. Like, even if Trae Young comes on, he's still going to be a rookie. He's still going to have a lot of disadvantages because he's undersized and he doesn't play a lot of defense. So you have to kind of take it as a grain of salt. So if you come in there expecting, like, he's going to be a 25-points a game guy, he's going to light everyone on fire with his range and all this other stuff, I don't do that. You are going to be disappointed if you think like that. So you have to treat these guys as rookies, because a lot of these guys are still 19 or 20 years old. They're not older guys. They're not seasoned veterans. Just I would always take the rookie years with a grain of salt, and like, okay, they're getting used to the league. They're not used to it yet. Give them a little break, and then if it goes on 2 or 3 years, then you can start to expect more. But first year, right out of the gate, I wouldn't think 25 points a game. If you got like maybe 16 or 17 points at a game as a rookie, like, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, Trae Young will be 20 years old come the start of the season because his birthday's in September. So it'll be a 20-year-old, so we'll see exactly what he can do in those years. The one thing, though,
I was thinking 15 and 8. 15, if I'm getting 15 points at least, 8 assists. Well, but that's what I'm looking for from him. I want a guy who can space the floor, find those open shooters. Give me 15 points, I'll be happy.
Dave, expectations for Trae Young?
Honestly, like,
because I mean, Lonzo did 10 and 7 this year, so why can't Trae Young do 15 and 8?
I think
Up
he's
those
not.
Points a little bit?
I think he's not crazy. That's the weirdest thing ever I'm going to admit to. But I'll say, yeah, roughly I'll go 15-7. I'll go 15-7.
Young's
I'll
not
bring
going
it
to have
down.
those ZO2s with him.
Yeah, no, not the ZO2s.
Now, just Trae Young as a player, though, is that 15-8 in Fred Hoiberg's system, or is that 15-8 in general on any team?
Anywhere.
We'll go to Pat first. We'll go to Pat second now. Thanks, Ricky.
You guys want me to go?
Yeah. Do you think it's a thing where if he's going to go 15-8 or whatever number you want to say in Fred's system, or do you think it's going to be anywhere he goes he'll have those type of numbers, or we should expect those type of numbers?
I think in Fred's system, I think that's reasonable, 15-8. In another system, that's kind of hard for me to judge. But I think in a fast-paced system where he's constantly throwing up threes or like throwing the ball up the court, I think that's reasonable, 15-8 in Fred's system. But for another system, I don't know if I would go that far.
I don't know. I mean, some of the other teams that are mocked, we all kind of love to mock him too, the Orlando Magic, and that's a team that I think the assist numbers might go down a little, and that's funny because Oklahoma has no one who can score, and he's still got 9 assists a game. Orlando screams the same exact thing, and if he could get 9.
Well, he'll have Fournier, and again, Aaron Gordon showed a lot of potential this year as a scorer. And then, Jonathan Isaac, we saw that he has somewhat of a stroke. Again, it's a very raw player. Really skin and bones, both physically and literally. Or physically and just at least, in a basketball sense. But, again, if they bring in a coach that will help him grow, because they still need to bring a head coach in, if they will bring a coach that has a similar system to Fred, maybe not exactly Hoyball, but, if they bring in a guy that will play a high-tempo offense, maybe we could see those numbers from Trae Young, in an Orlando situation. I think it's just something, if he goes to a team like Chicago, the assist numbers will be there. And that's really, will the points be there? Yeah. Will he be able to, will teams focus in on him just to force him to pass and get the ball out of his hands? So then, you're taking away at least his scoring part of the game. But then if he goes to a different team, let's throw out the Knicks in there. Maybe he'll have more opportunity to actually put up more points. Maybe he'll be more of a chucker. And maybe we'll see the points go up, but the assists will go down. I think it's going to be something, again, it's obviously going to fluctuate wherever he goes to the offense. But I think probably if we're looking at all of the NBA systems, especially in the range that he could go, I think probably Chicago's the best fit, at least system-wise right now, looking at all these teams. The one team that I probably don't think he fits on, weirdly enough, might be Cleveland, just because I feel like he's going to be better with the ball in his hands, and if LeBron's still there, he's not going to have the ball in his hands.
Well, and here's the question I have, kind of bringing it back to the Bulls a little bit, is if we go Trae Young, what's that starting lineup going to be with him in it? Are you going to go with a lineup of Trae Young at the 1, Chris Dunn at the 2, then Levine at the 3, and then Markkanen and Rolo, or if Rolo's not on the team, Markkanen and Bobby at the 4 and the 5? Or do you say, no, Trae Young's going to be our backup, Dunn's going to be the starter at 1, and go after because Kevin Durant's not going to be there, LeBron James is not going to be there, but do you go after a Paul George, a Jabari Parker, a Carmelo Anthony, Rodney Hood, one of these free agents to fill that 3 then?
We'll go to Dave first, and then we'll go to Pat.
Yeah, I think that I would probably have him splitting time. I would want to always try to pair him with Chris Dunn to cover up those defensive deficiencies, but honestly, I think that they could just say screw it and roll with small ball. I'm leaning more and more towards the point where I don't think you necessarily need to match up size-wise across the board. As long as you can outscore the other team and you have someone in the paint who can defend, you can roll out whatever kind of a roughly mid-sized lineup you want to. So I could see exactly what you said, rolling through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, honestly. So,
Pat, if they draft Trae Young, what do you think the starting lineup will look like? And Ricky brought in the fact of, what will you do in free agency? Will you try to fill that 3 spot? So at the start of next season, if they draft Trae Young in the NBA draft, what will the starting 5 for the Chicago Bulls look like in your mind?
I think it would still be Chris Dunn starting and Trae Young backing up to split time to start the season. Although I could see them, if the season goes along, I could see them experimenting with Dunn, Young, Levine, and then throwing Markkanen and Rolo out there.
Yeah.
It'd also be interesting to see if they would throw Trae Young at the 2 and then Dunn at the 1 and see how that would work. I just think that would be interesting. And I also think they do have a ton of cap space available. They're probably going to use a lot of it to sign Zach LaVine, but I could see them trying to go after a guy in free agency, whoever it may be, and then bringing him in there and fitting him in at the 3. Because I don't think Paul Zisper's fitting that 3 or Denzel.
The Zip God.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
they wouldn't have said, or John Paxson wouldn't have said in his press conference, like, we're going to look for a athletics 3 right here. And they wouldn't have said that if they had faith in Paul Zipser. So, yeah.
So we're going to wrap it up now. Final question is, will it happen? Will Trae Young be a Chicago Bull? We'll go to Ricky, then Dave, and then we'll wrap it up with Pat.
I'm going to be a little vain here. I'm going to say no because I'm right. He's going to go to the Magic, and then we're going to take Michael Porter Jr.
Dave.
But I would love Trae Young in a Bull
less
uniform.
douchey and say he's still going to the Magic. But yeah, it wouldn't be the end of the earth if we ended up with someone like Trae Young on our team.
Patrick.
I think it could happen. I'm not saying I don't think it probably might not, but I think it could if the Bulls fall back in the lottery and they fall far enough back where they don't get Michael Porter Jr., they don't get an athletic fee.
Now, Pat,
So, I think at that point, like, I've talked a lot about how Trae Young would fit well as a Bull, but he might be the most talented player that the Bulls might have on the board. So they'd have to have a decision. Like, do you want to reach for a 3 that might not be as good, or do you want to take the best player on the board available and find a way to fit him into your team? So, and I think that's a lot of how the NBA is kind of going right now. A lot of teams are picking talent, and they'll just figure it out later rather than going for fit. So I can definitely see it happening. But I think it just has to figure out how the mock draft or how the draft lottery is going to fall out. So the Bulls could stay where they are, or they could get really screwed and fall back. So I just don't know what's going to happen, but it could happen. I'm not banking on it happening, but I think it's possible.
Now, Pat, everything you said was 100% correct. But this is your first time on the Fast Break podcast, and we do things a little bit differently here. We do hot takes. I bet my car on LeBron James not losing in the first round. So Trae Young, after June 26th, when the hell's the draft? June 26th, June 23rd, whenever it is, will Trae Young be wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey?
It is the
24 days away.
24 days away?
Yep.
It's the 21st.
Not 24 days away, May's then.
NBA draft lottery is 24 days.
No, the draft.
21 hours.
He's
The
talking
lottery.
the draft.
The draft.
Oh, okay.
The draft is June 21st because it's a Thursday at VidCon.
Thank you.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Pat, after June 21st, will Trae Young be wearing a Chicago Bulls jersey?
I'll say yes. Because
Yes.
the rest of you guys said no. So I'll say
Nice. Thank you.
We got a hot take, and that's a great way to end the first segment of Pat being here on the Fast Break podcast. We got to thank Pat for being a patron and coming on to the podcast, choosing the right podcast, in my opinion. It's the only podcast I'm on.
I
You're on
think
every
they're all
podcast.
great
Ricky.
opinions.
They're all
great podcasts, Sean.
You all do a great job.
They are, but I'm just saying I have a favorite, and weirdly enough, it's mine. If you do want to be like Pat, though, and be a patron, head over to patreon.com/Moso Podcast. We want to thank Pat for joining us on the Trae Young segment, throwing out a great topic.